All right, so I'm going to record this session so that you guys can keep it for internal use, but if we decide to do a webinar with you all, of course we'll have one that you'd be able to post on your website and use for external consumption as well. Today we're going to go through a presentation about how that really educates people about the ransomware market and how ransomware variants have evolved and how they're working, and specifically how they're beating traditional security and backup systems, and how our draft solution doesn't get beaten by ransomware. And so the idea is it's a lot of education, and then all the questions that are posed throughout the presentation happen to end up with the answers that we have, which is kind of the challenger sales model. So as we go through it, thinking forward into a webinar that we may do for partners or customers of yours, think about points at which you'd want to come in and add some color or change the emphasis in the talk track or the title or everything. So to get started, so again, how ransomware beats your backups. Learn how to eliminate downtime and data loss. So we're going to start with a brief introduction of Silver software if we were doing the presentation, and then Infrascale, and then go through the mission. We're going to then dive into ransomware and describe how and why ransomware is winning and growing so rapidly today. And then we're going to talk about what you can do to beat it. And then we'll open up for some questions. So Silver software, I looked through your website and I put together what I was able to find based on what your website has. So this is, treat this as a bit of feedback for what your website says about Silver software, and I'll send this over after the presentation so you all can fill this in yourselves.
Nice, thank you, we'll do that.
No problem. About Infrascale. So Infrascale is a cloud software development firm. So we've been building cloud software since 2005, 2006. And when we first launched in 2006, it was just a direct-to-cloud online backup product, and it was one of the first in the market. And we were alongside many large companies that tried to get into the market, like HP Upline, and they couldn't make it. And our mission at that time was to take what was a enterprise-only service because of the cost and the complexity, and bring it down to the mid-market and even to individuals. And when it comes to disaster recovery, we're doing very much the same thing. And we'll describe how we're able to accomplish that. But we're taking what used to be an enterprise-only type of service, and we're bringing it down to a simplicity and a cost that businesses of all sizes can now afford. And that's one of the reasons we were recognized by Gartner last year as a leading visionary in the disaster recovery as a service space. And in Gartner language, visionary doesn't just mean a good roadmap or a good idea of what we want to do. You only get to be in the visionary quadrant if you're already delivering on that vision. So we're very excited to be recognized by Gartner, and 2017 reviews are looking promising as well, and we hope to see that in the next couple months. Infrascale has always been an internationally operated company, and we specialize in high security and highly available cloud backup and DR services. We serve over 1,000 partners worldwide, over 1 million devices protected and counting. Well, we have 7 global data centers that we use for backup and DR, and we expand that as needed. And the amount of data that we're protecting is just topped 100 petabytes, and of course growing every day. Our mission in what we build in leveraging cloud is to help businesses of all sizes eradicate downtime and data loss. Pretty simple. The reason that we focus on downtime and data loss really goes back to more of a kind of a first-hand experience in what data loss and downtime can do to a business. So our founder actually had some friends that had a business that was operating in Australia. They experienced some major downtime, and he thought to himself, there's got to be an affordable, easy way to help people avoid this type of occurrence where your business is strained and goes out of business because of a technical issue rather than a poor business decision. The reason the cost of downtime is something that we focus on is because it doesn't just affect an individual business. It has coattails that go out and it ripples across the whole regional and local markets as well. And because of this, the cost of downtime, and this study comes from North America, and North American businesses are estimated to have lost $700 billion per year due to downtime and data loss. And that's a big figure, and again, it's because of the ripple effect. And one instance doesn't mean immediately you are losing hundreds of thousands of dollars and you're out of business. It's usually a pain that you work through over a period of time as you rebuild and you catch up to where you were before that happened. One of the most important things that you can help your customers understand is understand what their cost of downtime is. Most businesses today, even manufacturers who live and die on their SLAs to deliver products that they're manufacturing, still are not always fully documented and aware of what their risk of downtime is. And this is an easy figure to come up with, and it's something that we can help you with after the presentation. The reason it's important is because it would make sense to spend $75 on insurance for a $2,000 flight across the world, maybe even $300. But it doesn't make any sense to spend $75 on a $75 flight. You just buy a new flight if something happens. And so that's why this is the basis of determining what the proper backup and disaster recovery solution is for you. The next step is understanding what the risks are associated with that. What causes downtime and data loss? And it's an unfortunate naming of the service in the market, calling it disaster recovery, because for non-technical people, disaster means fires, floods, hurricanes, things of this nature. Statistically, natural disasters are only 5% of the total costs associated with downtime. What we're really talking about are the micro disasters in things like hardware failure, human error, software failure, the things that happen very frequently and you cannot avoid, so you just have to plan to react to them, and you need to have the right reaction tools and services in place. So quick poll, we ask the audience to tell us, do you know how much your cost of downtime is? About 80% answer either A or B, and then we usually have 5% that answer C, and then the rest just don't answer. But so for the most part, this is a good question because it's a nice next step for your sales team. So let's get into ransomware. How is ransomware, where is it at today? How did it get there? And why is it beating traditional backup and security services? Well, first, as of September, between January 1st and September 30th of 2016, it was estimated that about $1 billion in ransoms were paid in that period of time, whereas the whole previous year of 2015, only about 25 million was collected. And the 1 billion is small in comparison to the estimated 70 billion in downtime losses that are associated with each ransomware attack. So just because you pay out a ransom doesn't mean you're going to be up and running immediately. Where did ransomware come from? Ransomware as a software that holds your machine or your data hostage is not new. It's about 30 years old. It's been around for a while. But as all markets, law-abiding and not, people learn from each other. So the first big learning and development in putting malware out and penetrating businesses and individuals was through phishing techniques. Phishing being sending fake emails that request personal information or login information from a user, or messages that contain malware that the user invites onto the system without knowing it. Hey, download this PDF. It's a resume of somebody I want you to look at, type of thing. These come in the form of emails, messaging through social platforms like Skype, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all these things. Today, about 1 in 3 phishing attempts work. So 30% of your workforce is going to allow some sort of malware onto your network through a phishing method. And that really became massive in the early 2000s, leading in 2007. The big change that made ransomware viable in a huge market is really the addition of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Previous malware and organized crime units, they would send out these phishing scams in order to collect information, and then they would sell this information on the black market to firms who would then farm the information in 2 different ways. One way would be to access existing accounts based on the information they can find, and then the second way would be to create new accounts based on the information they've found. And then the next step would be to extract money from that. Once the money gets extracted, then there's a complicated laundering process that goes into it so that they can actually use the money that they've gotten. This type of organized crime has a long ROI as far as the time from purchasing the list to getting any money that's usable, and it involves a lot of steps. With ransomware, they use phishing to have a very high success rate, 34% penetration rate, and then they are immediately put in contact directly with the user that they're ransoming, and they're going to pay in Bitcoins. And Bitcoin payments can't be traced and they can't be faked. So you have a very shortened cycle of return on investment. And that's why today you see that over 93% of all phishing attacks contain ransomware. So nearly the entire organized cybercrime market has shifted to ransomware because of how successful it is. And again, when you get hit by ransomware, you're given 2 options, right? You either pay out the ransom or you restore from a backup. When you pay out the ransom, it's really important that you have people that are educated in how to deal with ransomware. The knee-jerk reaction of anyone would be, get this ransomware off my machine. But in a lot of variants, removing the ransomware before you've decrypted your files would eliminate the option to pay out the ransom and decrypt your files. They use the same program to capture you as well as to release you. And that's not something that is obvious or common knowledge. So these steps to get rid of the ransomware or to decrypt your data if you don't have a backup are not exactly straightforward. You need to have qualified technicians that are going to know what to do when it happens. And when it comes to a backup recovery, you have to make sure that the backup or DR solutions you have in place are going to be there for you when you need them. And we're going to explain why that hasn't been true. And that they're there in a way for you that is helpful. Do they have the retention policy required? Do they help you identify when the infection may have happened? It's always a problem to restore, and then you've restored the virus, and then you get the same notice a week later. So you want to make sure that, again, you have technicians that are knowledgeable in this type of attack, so that they can best serve the business. So we've done our best to try to get it into 5 major categories of why ransomware is winning, and winning against traditional systems that a year, 2 years ago were absolutely going to save you in almost any instance of downtime or data loss. So the first is the lone wolf myth. And this is a problem more of how these types of attacks are communicated in news reports, and really underestimating what it is we're facing. If you read a report of a hospital being hacked and the hack used ransomware, that sounds like an active verb. It sounds like somebody one day, living in a basement with no windows and lots of black lights, decided, I'm going to disrupt this business. And there are those hackers out there. But that's not what we're talking about in terms of ransomware. These are large organized crime units, and they operate like any business would, except on the wrong side of the law. They have campaign tracking, they have quotas, they have referrals, they have industry-specific targeting methods, just like you or I would identify, we build a product to satisfy needs for businesses between 5 and 5,000 users, something like this. They do the same thing. So it's not that your business is so insignificant, who would possibly spend the time to individually hack you? That's not what you're facing. You're facing an automated response that looks through websites, business databases, LinkedIn profiles, these sorts of social networks to identify who to target, and it's all automated through software. One of the shining examples of the professionalism that we find in ransomware is with one of the latest variants that was built to be a ransomware as a service. So Spora, up until mid-February of this year, was largely found in Russian-speaking countries. Through the research of Spora, experts were able to find that this is absolutely built for ransomware as a service. There are campaign IDs, there are referral IDs, and methods used to track success rates for different campaigns and collect as much information as possible so that they can improve upon both their product and the method of distribution and the method of penetration of your network. One of the first things you'll notice in these screenshots is that this is a nice UI. And for anyone who's been through any type of software development, you understand that user interfaces are not free. It's not something that you would just do because you were bored. It does take time, it takes effort, it costs money. And Spora decided that they wanted to make the user experience in paying your ransom as simple and clear and nice as possible. So you can see here on the right side, there's actually a live chat support feed built right into the ransomware interface. So if you have questions about how to go through the decryption process once you've paid them, or if you're still trying to set up a Bitcoin account, which isn't always available to do 24/7, 365. A lot of countries have restrictions, and you can only transfer funds or set up funds on weekdays, 9 to 5 type of thing. You can ask them for help here. To combat the fear that paying out the ransom doesn't guarantee that you're going to get your data decrypted, they actually have a free trial so you can decrypt 2 files at no charge to prove that you are going to get your data back. Because again, it doesn't do them any good if people think that they're not going to get their data back if they pay, because then people don't pay. They also have an option to pay for a permanent immunity. So you get whitelisted from their variant of ransomware. It means you still have to worry about all the other variants, but because this is built to be a distribution model, and we've seen it pop up all over Western Europe, Africa, North America in the last few weeks, this would be a pretty good option depending on how much money we're talking. So again, it's not a lone wolf. It's not an individual that decides they really dislike a particular business and they want to disrupt it. This is an automated campaign. Just like you get emails for different technical services or webinars, you get targeted by ransomware. We're going to talk a little bit about how they're targeting. So, a lot of people know the kind of the business dead word, low-hanging fruit, but it's true. So what they're going to do is they're looking at businesses that are going to be unlikely to react to ransomware in any way other than paying out the ransom. So the SMB market, which is anyone from 5 to 500 employees, statistically, about 35% of the SMB market still does not have any type of backup in place. And the 65% that do are likely to have a very traditional backup. That's something that they can build a product around. So the SMB space is ripe for collecting ransoms because they're unlikely to have in-house IT staff to make sure that proper security and backup and DR services are not only running, but that they're up to date with the latest threats. And then they go after industries that have a very high pain point when it comes to downtime. Things like industrial services, utility providers, transportation services. The San Francisco Bay Area Rapid Transit System, also known as BART, was hit with ransomware a couple months ago. And while the transit system was left operable, they did lock out any ability to collect payment. So for the residents of San Francisco, it was a free ride day, although any city where you use mass transit, you pay by the week anyways, or by the month. But still, that was a major disruption for the city. Medical facilities are obvious because even if you have a backup in place, it's about the speed of recovery at that point because you're unable to deliver services. So when the Los Angeles Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital was hit, they had to transfer patients for an entire week because they couldn't perform services because they didn't know what services which patients needed. And then their systems were offline to record the services. So they couldn't operate. And when human lives are at stake, obviously people are going to be faster to pay out the ransom. At any cost, let's get back up and running, morals aside. And then financial and government agencies, same thing. You know that there's a lot of money behind those, and it's easy to profile the users. How do they target these businesses? Well, when phishing first started, it was just, phishing is a term used for going after individuals. And then the next step in phishing is called whaling, and that's where you're going after high-profile individuals. So VIPs, politicians, executives, this sort of thing. And whether that's blackmail or just stealing information or hoping to gain special access to information, doesn't matter so much, but the same thing happens with ransomware. So they use different social media platforms to build a campaign. So if they want to target businesses of X size, then they get a list of all of the contacts they can find that belong to that business, and then all of those contacts get targeted with ransomware. And again, statistically, by the numbers, 34% of those people are going to let the virus into the network, invite the vampire into the home. And then they modified their product so that the product actually has exploit kits that are able to move around the network and locate critical applications. So once the ransomware actually gets on your system or gets on an end user's machine, it used to just encrypt that user's files. But now it's set with particular attack parameters of access the domain, identify and access backups, high-value applications, SQL being the world's most popular, and any high-access trafficked files or applications. So the way it looks in the animation format is you have Mr. Ransomware, hits Mr. End User, and then slowly over time, the end user's files get encrypted until one day the end user gets a message. You have 12 hours to pay us half a Bitcoin, about 300 US, and then you can get your files back. Now it gets on the user's machine and it starts looking across the network. Okay, what are you connected to? That's great. Okay, who are you connected to? And it's going to spread to other users until it finds either the access it needs by virtue of getting that user's access, or by looking at holes in different applications, firewalls, transmission protocols, operating systems, you name it. And another reason it's important to have qualified techs who are on a regular basis updating your patches. It's very important to keep your patches up to date. Then it's going to find the access it needs, and once that happens, it's very quick to find critical applications and your backups, encrypt those files immediately, and then the business gets ransomed. And this is in short how it all works. In terms of, and again, we're going to have a solution for you. So it seems like it's come on as ransomware is kind of an avalanche of nothing you can do, and that's how it grew over 6,000% in less than a year. But we do have a solution for you. So just bear with us as we finish out the last two parts of this avalanche. So eliminating your backups. So this is important to note because you have to understand how the backups are working and how they're storing the data in order to identify a proper backup that'll be safe to use and one that won't. Again, that's where your expertise in Silver software comes in. So traditional backups are going to run, application, file, or bare metal level backups to some network storage. And that storage is going to be accessible to the network administrator. If that's the case, then your backups are susceptible to ransomware and they're being targeted. And being targeted could mean either they're just being removed altogether, like what Spora does, or that they're actually being encrypted themselves so that you wouldn't even have the option to recover and see if the virus is there. The file would just be useless until you pay out the ransom and then decrypt. When it comes to the Infrascale appliance, you're not actually susceptible from a local backup standpoint because the appliance is locked down. The storage that we're using to store the backup information and DR information is not open to the network. And it's because it's sitting on a proprietary code that we write to make things more efficient and faster when we're talking about replicating to the cloud and doing recoveries, whether it's to production environments or to our cloud. So your local backups are safe with us, but then the only other option would be you need to have your data go offsite because naturally the ransomware won't be able to transcend your network into the cloud and ruin everything there. The final reason that a lot of people find themselves still paying out ransoms despite having a backup or DR solution is because they don't have a proper DR plan. And by proper DR plan, I mean they haven't identified the restore time objective, how long their business can afford to be down before they need to do whatever it takes. Statistically, 80% of businesses that go down for 3 to 5 days or longer and do not recover all of their data back after the downtime ends do not survive the next 12 months. And again, that just speaks to the ripple effect that downtime and data loss has on a business. It's not an immediate, you're out of business, it's an immediate pain point that you'll be fighting uphill with for a period of time. So as we put together a backup and DR solution with you, that's why we start with what's your cost of downtime, and we try to stay out of this red box. So whatever recovery plan that we put in place, the goal would be to get you back up and running well before you enter the red zone. And to compare what a backup service does for you in terms of eliminating downtime versus a disaster recovery service, we have these two tracks in parallel. So the top is backup and the bottom is DRAS. To be put very simply, backup services they start with and they end with the data they're protecting and the data they're recovering. But there is no consideration for the business being in operational mode. And that's because it's a backup. It's not a bad part, it's just what the service is built to do. That means that the recovery time of using a backup system to get a full business back up and running is going to be much, much longer and have many more steps. When you're looking at a disaster recovery as a service option, the whole point is to eliminate downtime for your business. So that means that the time that we're testing against and that we're developing against is the time for your business to get back up and running. One of the things that we've done quite recently is we've added in boot orchestration. So it's one thing where we have disaster recovery and we can say, okay, you right-click a machine, you either hit Explore so you can recover individual files or applications, or you hit boot and you boot the machine to the cloud. And then you're running, and then you can reconnect your users to that machine or to those machines. But in a full site-wide recovery, it's not that simple, right? You may have many different servers with different roles and interdependencies on each other, and those need to be addressed in your recovery plan. So, does your recovery plan have documented steps of which applications have which dependencies so that you have an order? Most likely the answer is not a full plan that's documented, or that you're relying on tribal knowledge or relying on the tech that's working at the time to be able to deduce from what's on the network what should come up next. But that opens up a lot of probability for error. Every step that you have, greater risk of error in each step. So boot orchestration allows you to predetermine the order that you would need to recover a full site. So you would start with, say, your domain controller, which is your DNS and your Active Directory services. And then once that's up and running, then you would have your application server, your mail server, and your database server. And those are your secondary critical servers that you need to be up and running. Once those are configured, you can put in your tertiary servers. So your web server, which is going to require connection to your database, and also likely your application server as it's collecting information, and then your file server. And then once you have your network, then you can start reconnecting your users, and then you've ended downtime. What this looks like in our interface is a nice easy drag and drop structure where you can create different groups and put different time limits between each group of servers. So if you wanted a time limit to be, or a delay rather, to say, okay, we want to boot these machines and then we need a 3-minute break so that we can run a quick script to enable and configure some different services, whatever it is you need to do, or just to allow proper application load time, then you can do this. And the benefit is that you don't need somebody to follow instructions, right? So you can have your entire network recovery plan documented in your recovery tool, and all you have to do is come in here and press run, and then it's going. And if you needed to switch around applications or machines, it's just a drag and drop interface, and it's very easy to do. So this is a huge amount of time savings, plus it makes your test recovery very simple and very fast, and it just makes the services that you wouldn't typically offer too often, like a test recovery, something that you can do on a much more frequent basis. And this goes into a lot of how do you keep your business on the leading edge as far as, are you protected from all the new threats that are out there today? And that's where a lot of these businesses fell down, is they had a backup that was good for everything except for ransomware, and that's not going away. So another poll, based on what we covered, and we're going to go into the how you protect yourself in more detail right now, but as of right now, if you were hit with ransomware, would you be well prepared? And a yes answer means that you're going to be well under 2 hours of downtime. Close but no cigar means you probably wouldn't have to pay the ransom, but it's not going to be a 2-hour recovery. And then no means, worst case scenario, you have to pay out the ransom. All right, so what do you need to do? If you read this quote from Bruce Schneier, who's a well-renowned security guru, or if you read the analyst report from Gartner or from Forrester or from anyone who blogs in the tech space, everyone is in agreement. Having a good backup and recovery strategy is simply the best thing that you can do in any case, but when it comes to ransomware, it's really your only option. Infrascale offers system failover in 15 minutes or less at a fraction of the cost and without all the trade-offs. And by trade-offs, I mean there's a lot of different technology out there in the market. And usually the major trade-off is how quickly you can recover versus how much you're going to pay for that. So the first is an off-site tape backup solution, right? So you don't have a lot of money and you can withstand a large amount of downtime. So you go with tape backup. Cloud backup, you have faster recovery and you pay a little bit more. You also have other advantages, but not so important for this talk. Appliance-based backup is a really good solution, and it's going to cost you a little more, both in capital and operating expenses. And this is usually where most of the SMB market starts to max out. Cold site DR, this becomes quickly a very expensive solution because it nearly means that you're doubling your infrastructure costs so that you have standby infrastructure so that you can quickly get things back up and running. Warm site DR, even more so, more operating costs, more hardware costs. And then hot site DR, if you're not calculating downtime in terms of minutes, you're probably not going to afford this type of service. This is an Amazon shopping cart type of thing. And what we've done is by leveraging the cloud, because we're a cloud software vendor, we've been able to give people a near hot site DR solution for what ends up being a little like usually 30 to 40% less than an off-site tape backup solution. And that includes operational and capital expenses. And we don't make you trade off how much money you can spend versus how much time your business can withstand to be down and out of operation. We also don't make you choose between what can be protected. Most traditional systems today are going to stick to just your primary servers, and everything else, your remote offices and endpoints, are exposed. Well, this is bad for business. We just finished talking about how it's your endpoints that are going to be the entry for ransomware. So it's no longer an acceptable solution that people that aren't on your network are given advice by the IT staff and told, hey, if you don't follow our advice, that's your prerogative. It's now the prerogative of the business to make sure that those endpoints are taken care of. And we give you that option. You have your Infrascale DR for your critical applications, so you can boot them and reconnect your users. And then for all of your users out in the field or in different offices, you have a direct-to-cloud cloud backup option so that they won't lose any data when they do get infected. The other trade-off is that, again, a lot of these traditional systems are very much designed for full site-wide failures. And if you have to recover an individual file, it's not very cost-effective for you to recover it. Especially if we look at the worst case scenario, a tape backup system, it may take 5 or 6 hours to get a single email back from that. If you go more into hard drive-based systems, maybe it's a little bit faster, but maybe it's still an hour, 2 hours. Our option is there's no additional licensing. You have your machines backed up. You either right-click and explore, if we're talking about the DR product, and then you can find the individual files and push that back to a user, or you can create a new virtual machine if you're in a virtual environment under a new host or the existing host, and then just move the user over to that machine. Or you can boot your entire network into the cloud. And with Infrascale Cloud Backup, you can just recover entire machines worth of files, or just specific directories or specific files. There's no additional steps or configuration. It's just how it's built to be. So what does the new road to recovery look like if you're working with a solution that leverages the cloud properly and isn't a hardware provider that's tacked the cloud onto it? Is you have your business users, they're all working, and all of a sudden they can't do anything. They can't send or receive emails. When they try to go and open a file, they get a message that says the file can't be found because the file server is down. Maybe they haven't made files available offline. They can't make any commitment changes to their database, so they can't check order statuses. They can't check project timelines or statuses. They can't update anything. They call their specialist. The specialist logs into the dashboard from any place they have a working internet connection. They see the machines are down. They right-click and boot, or they boot the entire environment using boot orchestration, and then they reconnect the users. What we've found with our customers is that a serious site-wide failure usually results in under 2 hours of total downtime. In this case, we have the University of Virginia, which is on the east coast of the United States, and the University of Calgary, which is in Canada. And in May or April of last year, the University of Calgary was hit with ransomware, and it infected all of their end users and their mail server and their file server. And when they were going through their backups, which they had a traditional backup system, running full backups on the weekends, incrementals throughout the week, and then doing it over again, they were unable to recover enough information to avoid paying out the ransom. So their total downtime was 10 days because it took them about 4 or 5 days to do a recovery and verify that that wasn't enough. Their backups largely didn't include any data being held by the end users. And when you're a university, all the end users are usually working on research that the university is funding or being funded to do or paid to do. So that was critical. So they ended up paying $10,000 in ransom. We were down for 10 days. decryption is not immediate. A lot of these variants require a file-by-file decryption process. Some allow you to select entire directories. Some require you to select file by file. So you hope that if you do get hit by ransomware, that you get hit by a more professional variant that's going to make the experience better, like what you saw with Spora, if you don't have a proper backup and DR solution in place. Otherwise, it can be quite a long time just to go through the payment method. When Calgary was hit, this sent a shockwave through the university network, and Ellen McCree was told to go find a solution. She ended up with Infrascale, and she said that one of the most surprising things was that even after all the demos and all of the things that we said we could do, when they actually got to install the product, she thought she would finally see some complicated stuff. What she said was within an hour of the setup appointment, they were running backups and replicating those backups off-site. It was the simplest setup she's ever had. Because of how easy it was to recover, she decided to do test recoveries every month. And so she was actually hit with ransomware 3 months after deploying our service. And the variant that hit them was quite interesting. What happened is it spoofed an Office email that would come from like an Office scanner printer product. And so everyone in the office got an email with a PDF. It wasn't a real PDF. It was some JavaScript, the ransomware. And it said, oh, you just got this scan from this other user in the office. So naturally, everyone opened it up to see what, let's call them Pam. We'll see what Pam sent them. And everyone got infected. She got the call, and she said she didn't break a sweat. What she did is she immediately went into her dashboard. She wiped all the users' profiles and then pushed all the user profiles back from the backups. And she said if it wasn't for the fact that she had to wait for the dean of the school that she worked for, taking some time to give her a thumbs up to go ahead and do it, she could have been done about 20 to 30 minutes sooner. Since then, the University of Virginia has ordered many more units for just about every other school that include within the university. And it's because of how easy it was to use. And then, of course, it also helps to have a real-life case of, oh my gosh, and then an actual good story when the recovery came into play. And that brings us to our final poll. Would you like to be contacted for a free evaluation? And this is where you all would, in the webinar, talk about what your next steps are and how you talk with your partners and set them up and see how you can help them. And now it's open to questions. So any questions, comments?
Thank you for that, Derek. That was very helpful, very, very informative and interesting. Yeah. No questions from my side. Just can you hear me, by the way?
I hear you.
Okay, good stuff. No questions from my end. I've just been making some notes here and thinking about how about co-presenting together and where I can chime in and elaborate on stuff. But we will discuss it on another call. But no, that's a very, very good presentation that you put together, and I think it will do very well with us. Really good response from this.
Thank you. Well, I guess I'll ask a question. Did you find the discussion about how ransomware works to be helpful? Was this information that you didn't realize before, or that you only knew a little bit about, and it was helpful to get a deeper dive, or was this something that you already knew and you'd like to get deeper?
Well, we do actually come across ransomware with our partners on a daily basis, so it's extremely prevalent, even in South Africa. To be honest, a lot of it I was aware. I can't say the same for all our partners though, so it's a nice holistic explanation, rundown of everything ransomware. Me personally, I was aware of a lot the aspects that you brought up about ransomware. There were a couple of points though that I know, and you taught me something new there. Yeah, so besides those couple of points, it's all very, very information. I think a lot of our resellers will benefit from this. You brought clips that I know a lot of our resellers aren't aware of. What I found particularly interesting was that you recommend that unless you can sufficiently restore from backup, to not with the ransomware, because it will eliminate your option of at least paying the ransom to recover your data. That I did not. That is very useful information.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I think just we'll discuss it on our follow-up call, just how we'll make some minus the presentation, just so that I can chip in and co-present with you, especially with I'd like to direct it more at, for the first one, for example, do you know how much downtime costs your clients? And for the second call, if ransomware hit your clients this day, would you be prepared, just gearing it for others instead of end users? But yeah, no, it's very good as well.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. You can certainly redirect some of these slides in the talk track to partners. No problem.
Yes, definitely. I will just put in some of our contact details as well. I see that you were recording this. Would you be able to send me that recording after this?